Liberty of free speech and self-expression can result in the harm and oppression of another. Both free speech and hate speech have its pros and cons. While freedom of speech has helped advance oppressed groups, for example through civil rights, gay liberation, and women's movements, it can also inflict harm by degrading, terrorizing, and humiliating individuals. If freedom of speech is restricted, then it also silences those who may benefit from it. At the same time, regulation of hate speech does not necessarily mean restricting freedom of speech. Despite the opposing sides of the two concepts, the following are issues relevant to both: pornography, including virtual child pornography, racist speech, sexist speech, hate speech, issues involving national security, and Holocaust denial.
Trying to define the freedom of speech, particularly differentiating free speech from hate crime, can become a slippery task. The skeptical view presents an argument in which freedom of speech is indistinguishable from other activities such as art, burning a flag, and so forth. Language carries a communicative power through its ability to convey information and create interchange. The task to draw a line between the two views becomes even more difficult in a legislative context of the court, which acts should be treated as hate crimes and which ought to be protected under the right of freedom of speech.
Is a criminal offence motivated in whole or in part by an offender's bias against a race, religion, disability, sexual orientation, ethnicity, gender, or gender identity? Despite the clarity of the definition, freedom of speech and hate crime are two opposing phenomena in public discourse that remain difficult to differentiate for many. Individual bias drives the perception of whether an act is a hurtful one or not. This has been proven by a study on a common phenomenon in the USA. In brief, this study is concerned with individuals presenting their hate speech in a very subtle manner, as a tactics to seek free speech protection which simultaneously allows them to continue offending.
There is a very fine line between restricting freedom of speech and not stripping this fundamental human right of its main purpose. Freedom of expression may need to be restricted in certain circumstances, as it carries with it special duties and responsibilities. However, such restrictions should only be in place as provided by law and where necessary. According to the International Center for Nonprofit Law, acceptable regulations are those that are in place for respect of the right of reputation of others and for the protection of national security, public order, or public health and morals. For example, it is justifiable to prohibit contempt of court, voter intimidation, and child pornography. A thriving civil society depends on legal protections that ensure expressive activities to not harm others. At the same time, laws and regulations must be safeguarded against interpretive abuse of unjustified restrictions.
Alternative approaches regulating free speech also exist. As an example, we have a series of hate speech incidents on college campuses, in which case freedom of speech remains unrestricted, despite its offensive or harmful outcome. There is a belief that a single limitation on free speech may lead to many others, until it becomes a slippery slope. Education and knowledge can teach to respect others' backgrounds, appearance, and faiths, and in turn create a space where hate speech phases out naturally.
Universities need to be a place where students and scholars are free to consider a broad range of ideas, most especially those that test conventional wisdom or prevailing viewpoints. Focusing on effective teaching practices that train students in constructive argumentation strategies, faculty can work towards reducing biases that stem from the liberal-conservative binary that is prevalent in popular culture.
After considering both sides of the argument, we have agreed that the basis for issues surrounding free speech should be addressed at an early age. Through education, children as young as 5 could be directed towards what is right or wrong, being respectful and appreciating cultural sensitivity. Such an approach can be a lengthy process and may require many institutes to alter their curriculum. However, this path can result in a society in which freedom of speech regulates itself through mutual respect and appreciation of differing thoughts and opinions.